Hi everyone, it's Paul Rosano here from e-commerce camp co UK. Where it's our next live talk show, and I definitely want to introduce my guest, which we met very randomly on one of the events, and Luke was so kind giving his advice to our to our personal brand Cabin Luggage Co UK, and his expertise in e-commerce is really decent. So guys, if you're listening us on LinkedIn or YouTube, please, there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions. So any questions you will have, just use the chat below, and we'll be able to ask them in the live with Luke. So Luke Bream, CEO of Valentte, amazing e-commerce brand. Thank you for the gift that you posted to
That's
me,
all
that you
right.
sent me. It's really a pretty nice Christmas surprise, so appreciate it. Welcome to the live talk.
Thank you. Really excited to be here and have a chat through about what we're doing and share some ideas.
Just to give a little bit of context for people who will be watching this in live or in the street in the recording. I know you mentioned to me that you have some WooCommerce development background. If that's true or not, like how come as the WooCommerce the person with the WooCommerce development background became a merchant retailer, and
So,
what
so
drives you
my
to Valentte?
yeah, my partner at the time. So I was developing web apps for people in the late 2000, between 2007 and 2010, and my partner at the time, she became obsessed with natural soaps and natural skincare, and she decided that she wanted to start that business. And at the time, I wasn't involved. And so we lived in a shared house in London, and she started making natural soap, and ultimately got a stall at Greenwich Market in London. And the business went from there, and I then got involved, and we gradually grew. But for the first 10 years, until COVID came along, we were a tiny business. We had 5 members of staff, a very small online business, and you'd have mainly found us at consumer shows, so at flower shows and county shows and things like that. And we would do. We had sales probably of about 500,000 a year, and we were very small, just ticking along, working very hard, but not really making very much money. And then COVID came along, and everything changed. We all the shows were cancelled, and we then had to go and explore online. Unfortunately, we were in a position where we were ready to do that. We took the bounce back loan. We got the full of 50,000, and we put that into Facebook ads. We'd never done any advertising before, and that first week we spent just over £1,000 on ads, and by the end of that first year, we'd spent nearly £1 million on ads, and that really catapulted the business. And we're now 50 times bigger than we were 5 years ago. So it's been a crazy journey, interesting, challenging. We have more than 200 staff now, and it's a journey. No other way to describe it. Some good things, some bad things, and we've learned some really hard lessons along the way. No one shows you how to do it. You have to make the mistakes yourself.
We will go through all of those steps with you on this show. So, so that was not your idea eventually, right? So it was your
No.
wife.
It's not my wife actually. So we used to be, in those days we were a couple, but we haven't. She and I haven't. We're best friends and still remain best friends now. But we haven't been a couple for, gosh, I don't know what it is, at least 10 years. Could be 12. I can't remember. But we're best friends, and people often mistake us for being a couple.
Okay, well, I mean, but so when you started doing this full time, you step out from the AT things, right?
Yeah.
How do you find this, the AT background that you have? How come that this background? How do you apply this IT background, technical background, into the business that's more, like a kind of a home decor, that type of stuff? How does it help you?
At that time, I wasn't applying my IT skills at all in the business. I actually had a much more applicable business for that. My career was in starting in businesses. I'd had 2 significant businesses before that, unfortunately, both of which went bust. So in my 20s, I had a clothing company. In my 30s, I had a sandwich factory based in London. That went bust in 2006, and so I then was looking around for something new to do, and I was pretty damaged by my like emotionally, I suppose, from this, particularly my sandwich factory going bust, and it coincided with separating from my wife, and I really stopped wanting to build a business, and I started traveling a bit, and I used code. I learned to code as a way of paying for that, and I got very involved in endurance sport. I was doing really long distance in ultra marathon cycling and rock climbing, and I mean random stuff. I lived in a cave outside Paris in Fontainebleau for months, nearly 6 months, and just climbed every day, cycled around, and so on. So I lived a very alternative life for 3 or 4 years, and learning to code supported that. So I wouldn't say I was a full on. I was much more involved in business and sales than I was in IT actually and development, though I had a really strong background in that when we started the business. But ironically, the way the business was, we couldn't really use that, and actually we got sort of sucked into a pathway of doing markets and then shows, and it's quite difficult to get off that treadmill. And I think if COVID hadn't came along, I would perhaps never have got off that treadmill. We were sort of, you get stuck in a lane, and it's difficult to move away from that. And ironically, my agenda was only ever to build an online business. That's what I really wanted to do. It's where I felt my skills were, but we weren't actually doing that. So COVID was a bit of a lucky break, really, in that sense for us.
I hear this a lot when the COVID boosted the specific company, right?
Yeah.
And but I'm still really surprised because all the candles that you guys have, eventually I can go into Tesco, whenever other, Amazon, etc. And you said that
It's
it
a
was.
very fragmented. It's a very fragmented marketplace. It's very competitive, but equally it's fragmented, and that gives quite a lot of opportunity. It's also a marketplace that's got a lot of price elasticity. Like there's a lot of variation in price. You can buy home fragrance products in the supermarkets, for argument's sake, or one of the discount retailers at very cheap, £1 or £2, £3. You can then buy more premium products at 20, 30, 40, £50 for an item, and then everything in between. And we sit in the middle of that. I mean, our business model essentially is to manufacture everything in-house, provide the same quality as you would get from a premium luxury brand, and charge you trade prices for it. So you're paying half or even a third of the price of one of these really big brands, but you're getting, we argue and we believe you're getting the same quality from us. So that's stood the test of time. We've got 400,000 odd reviews on the website, and we have very, very high retention of customers. So 80% of our transactions are returning customers, and that's borne out ultimately from the quality of the product. Anybody can sell a product once. You just discount it to the level that you need in order to make the transaction. So someone will always buy something once if you price it right or you articulate the messaging right. They'll buy it, but they won't repeat purchase. So if the product itself doesn't live up to the customer's expectations, doesn't deliver, they don't repeat purchase. So I think the proof of the pudding for our product ultimately is in the retention and what we describe as raving fans in a good way. It's our customers are very loyal. They tell their friends about the brand, and they come back again and again to shop with us, and we're very thankful and grateful for that. And it's the challenge is to hold on to that and keep those customers happy while at the same time growing the business. Now, and that is challenging, and it's the challenge that we really face at the moment, because I think that it's most businesses, most entrepreneurs can build a business to somewhere between 3 million and say 25 million on basic ability, and the size will depend actually on the skill set of the owner or the founder and a bit on the marketplace. But to get beyond that is a very, very different proposition. And you've got to professionalize the business. You need to bring in a lot of systems and processes, and that is challenging. And we're right in the middle of that now, where you have to move. We've got more than 200 staff now, and we've had to move from having generalists where they're good at lots of things towards a scenario where you've got specialists at each different activity, and that's a challenge. It's been a very difficult process that we're going on, and probably been on most of this year, whereby we go forwards, we grow a little bit, and then we haven't got enough of the systems in place to cope with that, and we fall back again a little bit, and we have operational problems or so on. And then gradually what we've become aware of is how important it is to get the structure of the business right, get job descriptions and training and communication and meetings and all of these things that basically big companies take for granted. That's what they do. Small companies don't have that. And essentially what I've realized is the very characteristics that I have and my business has that's allowed us to grow to the size that we are now the problem. And we have to physically unlearn those. Like, I as a leader have to unlearn them, and my team and my business has to unlearn them, and we have to replace them with structures and rules and discipline and consistency and slower decision making and all these kind of things that were the antithesis of what we did before. They're the price of entry into building a really big business. So I'm spending a lot of my time at the moment looking at businesses that have grown through that successfully. What are the characteristics of the leaders who've done that? What are the characteristics of the businesses themselves? What do they talk about? What do they do? And it's not easy. And I always thought the challenge of growing a business was getting the sales. But what I'm increasingly aware of is that actually growing sales in this modern age with ads and so on is relatively easy. It may be expensive to acquire customers, but it's relatively easy to do. What is not easy is to cope with that growth as you significantly scale. And I think you go through stages. I can think back over our journey, and there were very specific stages of growth that we've been on over the last 5 years. And right at the moment, we're probably in the hardest one. I would say the most challenging one, where the job that I personally do is having to change the most. And Valentte will continue to grow if I manage to lead my team through that. Many entrepreneurs get to the size that we're at, and that's where they cap out. They don't have the ability to move the business through that, because your job changes so much. And I'm becoming aware of that. I haven't yet solved it, but I think with anything, the first stage to solving problems is recognizing what the problem is and actually uncovering what it is. Normally it's relatively easy once you've figured out what the problem is. And I suppose it's taken us 6 to 9 months to really figure out what the problem is. And it's not even cheap to solve either, because what it really requires is bringing in very experienced, pretty expensive senior leadership who have been there before. So we've brought in a head of operations who used to run who was head of operations for a 500 million a year pet food company. We've brought in a head of finance, similar background, and a head of marketing. And we're about to recruit a head of e-commerce and potentially a head of sales as well. And those people know what good looks like. They know what a big business looks like, the systems, the processes, how they actually work. And I need that, because I don't. I've never worked in one of those kinds of organizations. I can feel what we need, but I don't actually know what it looks like. So it's a challenge.
I want to go back in a second about retention of your clients. So you said 80% of the customer base is the repeated orders.
Yeah.
I mean, I know you're also shopping probably on other websites, and you have expertise with other e-commerce businesses, and you know how they treat the clients. And everyone right now talking about the loyalty and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What do you believe you do better than anyone else in your pipeline, just to keep people going back? What's
So I think it starts actually with the first purchase. It's amazing the unnoticed how important that is. So if you sell something to somebody and they don't love it, well, you've got very little chance of making a repeat purchase. Now, we were already doing this, but I heard this articulated. I was at Shop Talk in Barcelona, and I watched a speech by, I think, maybe the head of marketing, but I'm not sure, of one of these clothing brands whereby you pay a monthly subscription. I can't remember their big brand, multi-billion-pound brand. And what that person articulated they were doing in their space was they recognized that if the person kept the very first purchase, they tend to stay in their subscription. But if they return the first purchase, they unsubscribed. And what they then made the connect. Now, the obvious thing to do is to say we should put our, so they sell from an edit, an edit of products. That's what they put in front of the customer. Now, the obvious answer is you put your best-selling product in front of the customer. But what they realized was that didn't cut it, because they potentially still had high returns. So what they twisted that round and what they put in front of the customer was the products with the lowest return rates as the first purchase. Because then what happened was the customer got in, liked the first experience, liked the first product, and was then more forgiving on the second purchase. Now, when they analyzed the criteria for what has low return products in clothing, I mean, you can guess this, is products that have got lots of stretch. So they made sure, because they're more forgiving on the sizes, the customer doesn't know the sizing. So when they came to show to the first product, first edit, lots of stretch products. Second edit, well, now the customer's bought in, they don't mind returning so much then, they're in and away. So that's how that brand did it in clothing. And we did something similar in our business, but we did it around the best-selling product. So we made sure that the first purchase, the customer got our best-selling products, because by doing that, you increase the likelihood that they're going to repeat purchase. Now, we actually created a bundle with 2 of our best-selling products in. Now, typically, our customers don't like both of those products. They're a little bit like a Marmite tail. So they love one and they dislike the other one. But what we realized was that didn't matter. It doesn't matter that they don't like the other product. What matters is they fall in love with one of the products, because that's what drives the repeat purchasing. So we then do quite a lot in the first 30 days to get the customer to make a second purchase. So around 20% of customers make a second purchase within 30 days, and that eventually peaks at between 55 and 60% will go on to make multiple purchases. So it's a combination of getting the right first product, the right first order, having a deep, good product at the end of the day that actually does what it says on the tin, and then doing things that help get in the second purchase. Really regular emailing, asking for a review, tying the review to a repeat purchase. The gain for that helps as well. I mean, we do that. It makes a big difference. So retention is the name of the game. I mean, new customer acquisition is so expensive now that fine. In the old days, you could make money off the first transaction. That's pretty hard to do now. It is still possible, but it's difficult. In our own business, we would hope to break even on the first transaction. And it depends a lot on ad spend, to be fair. But so you've got to have a pipeline. You've got to have a repeat purchasing. I mean, I was talking to someone yesterday who's got an e-commerce business in, really great guy. And we had a conversation for the first time on Teams. And, he was talking about a podcast he'd been watching with the founder of Ridge, the wallets, and saying that that guy's got to find $200 million a year worth of new customers. I mean, imagine that. That's 1 million new customers or something like that, 500,000 to 1 million new customers every single year. Well, we thankfully are not in that position where we sell a consumable and people come back and repeat purchase. I would not want to be acquiring that many new customers. You've got to be really good at ads to be doing that.
In terms of the channels right now, to get the new clients, what I understand that you started.
It's Facebook predominantly. It's predominantly Facebook. So we get, depending on exactly how much we're spending on ads. So we get somewhere between 400 and 800 new customers every single day, 7 days a week. And those new customers, our spend varies. So we're spending on Meta and we're spending on Google primarily. There's a tiny bit on Bing, but it's mainly those two, and it's massively biased towards Meta. So if I look at peak spend, we were spending in combined about £650,000 a month, 600,000 on Facebook, and about 50,000 on Google. We have now ratcheted that spend right down. We come into our last quarter, we want to concentrate on profitability, and we brought the spend right down. Currently, we're spending about 150,000 on Meta, and our Google spend's unchanged, 50,000 a month. And we play about with spend, partly on cash flow, partly on our objective. Is our objective profitability at that time, or is it growth? Partly it's on the performance of the ad account. So if we're seeing good performance, we'll increase ad spend. If we're not seeing good performance, we'll back off. So it's a sort of moving feast. And I think we've gone through agencies, we've gone through doing it in-house. We do it in-house at the moment. I think the big takeaway from us in ads at the moment is around creative volume, really big creative volume, lots of separate ad sets, concentrating our spend on new customers, though we still get, it doesn't matter how much we exclude our existing customers, Facebook still sends tons of them back to us. But our basic structure is to have lots of separate ad sets with the maximum 50 ads in each one. So we're using a lot of creative and producing a lot of creative.
What type of creativity right now works? Is it like a static ads, video?
It's a mixture of the two, but I just say it really is a mixture of all of them. I don't think there's any one thing that I wouldn't feel comfortable saying that other. I think one thing that is changing is being much more about buying personas or avatars, or however you want to describe that, so that you really are calling out what you're helping the algorithm understand who you're targeting, and very distinctive. So I think that's the big thing. It's no good. In the old days, you could do 10 variations of the same, broadly speaking, the same ad with tiny variations. That does not cut it anymore. You need variations that are significantly different. We're moving towards ad sets that basically target different, call out different. Because we're in most females in the country can be customers of ours. So we're just calling out different criteria within those. So that's we're moving towards that. But I think the big play at the moment is massive creative volume. I think there's no substitute for that now. You've got to figure out how to be making not 10 ads a month, but hundreds of ads a month. It's our view on it. I mean, I think maybe at the moment, I don't know, I haven't looked in the account, but we've probably got 500 or 600 live ads, something of that order. Could be a bit less. But it's volume now. You really need to figure out volume of creative and go for it being significantly different.
When we visited you guys, I realized you have a lot of four web developers who's on top of the website every day by day, and sounds like you have a dedicated conversion rate optimization team that's running a different experiments. How difficult is that to do this all in house? Like, who's producing all those ideas?
I think so. Originally all of that came through myself and a guy, Zach, who works for me, and we basically did everything. And then gradually, as the business has grown, we've built out teams of people to do that functionality. Conversion rate optimization, we started with an agency who were good, really good. I rate them, and they were developing the tests and so on.
Feel free to name the agency.
Yeah, they were Conversion Wise. They're based in the UK. I think they're down in Bristol. And I think they did a good job, and I would certainly recommend them. And I think we had to figure out how we worked with them, because they were, I think, used to working with slightly more smaller businesses who didn't have the developer support that we've got. And so it slowed down the process. We wanted them to iterate and do more testing. So in the end, we eventually found a working relationship where we did a lot more of the implementation than they were used to. And they developed the tests, monitored the tests, and we physically did the coding and so on for that. But that was a good process, and we subsequently have brought that in-house. And that's typically been our model, in fairness. We like solving problems internally. We like doing things. So sometimes we use agencies to learn how to do something at the beginning, and then we bring that in-house. Other times we go the other way. We do stuff in house to begin with, and then send it out. We've gone both ways. Yeah, I think it's important though for founders and people. Ads are such a critical part of growth now. I think it's really important. It shouldn't, as a leader of an e-commerce business, you've got to understand ads. It's, you're spending more on ads than wages. You're spending more on ads than stock in some cases. So you need to understand ads. I think as a founder, you have to be close to that.
I'm 100% agree with that. When I also visited you guys have also printed catalog as well, which is, I think, none of my clients have been distributing. And you said like you're renting a house twice a year, if I'm not mistaken.
No, it's more. It's more. I mean, we rent one every time we shoot a catalog, and we do 6 catalogs a year. We'll rent a house at least once, and now we're beginning to rent one twice to have more content for it.
How you distribute this offline?
So at the moment they just go out in our orders. So at the moment we do between 2,000 and 3,000 orders per day. Then maybe a little bit less. So, and we ship 7 days a week, and the catalog goes out into every single one of those orders. And I think we believe, and we long term we want to get into direct mail, but and actually posting that out, but we don't do that at the moment. It just goes out with orders. It's quite hard to quantify whether it's effective, but my gut feel is it is. And I think that, I mean, there's a clothing band, a British clothing band called Bowden, and he was very famous. That business started off like in the catalog space, and I remember a quote from him. Johnny Bowden, I think, is the founder of that. And I remember reading something where he said, the biggest mistake in my business career was to stop the catalog. And the best decision in my career was to bring the catalog back. And so I think this true. I can't quantify that it works, but we've been doing that for a bit over a year and a half, perhaps. And it is a lot of work. It's quite a significant amount of time. I mean, that catalog now is up to about 74 or 76 pages or something, 72 pages. So it's a significant amount. You've got all the photography, you've got models, you've got locations in the houses that we rent. Some of it we'll shoot in our studio that's on site. And then you've got all the graphic design work to do that. So, and then there's a cost. They're not as expensive as you think if you're printing them in decent volume, and you can dip your toe in. We'll typically do a small print one when it first comes. When we print it, the first order might be 10,000 of them. That allows us just to check the print, check we haven't made any mistakes in it, and so on. And then we'll have that catalog for 2 months, and then we'll place a much bigger order that covers us through that. So I definitely think it's a good move, but don't underestimate. It's quite a lot of work.
On that level of the company, when the level of scale, what type of tools do you use right now on day-by-day basis, and what type of ERP, whenever e-commerce platforms, if you don't mind, just to share?
Yeah, no. So we're on WooCommerce. Would I do that again rather than Shopify? No, if I have my time again. But I think the problem we had was that I had a background in WordPress development, so I understood the platform. So that was partly driven it. In going back into 2019, late 2019. I felt the writing was on the wall for WooCommerce, and I thought we need to move. And Shopify was the up and coming platform at that time. In no way was it as established as it is now, but it was still, you could see how exciting that platform was going to be. And I built out a full copy of our site in Shopify. But the problem became at that time, the way Shopify was coded, it loaded a container, and then you had apps for a lot of the functionality. We were doing a lot of bundles and mix and match bundles. There was no native support for bundling at that time in Shopify. You had to use an app, and you were reliant on how fast the app servers were and how well they were coded. And it just was not fast enough. And so we moved away from it, invested in significantly in our own hosting and development team to support WordPress. And now there's, you're 5 years further on, 5 years worth of code and architecture and systems and so on. It's just not worth changing. So we've got WordPress on the front end. We have a warehouse management system that sits in the middle that deals with couriers and picking and packing and so on. That's called MintSoft. And then at the back, you've got a software called Unleashed, which deals with our stock control. It deals with all our manufacturing and so on, purchasing and that kind of thing. And then sitting above all of that, we've got a web application that we built. We used to use the native API connections between those services, but because they were chained together, if we ended up with an order queue and the queue would build up, we would aim. You could suddenly find you've got 10,000 orders in the queue. That would mean it wasn't getting to our stock control system, so we were selling stock that we didn't have, a nightmare. So we built this web application, removed all the native API connections, and we service everything through our web app. So we do all the communication there. So an order gets placed on the website. We take that order, we manipulate it a bit, we push it into the stock control system, and before it goes anywhere near into our picking and packing system. So it's, and that's, so part of our development team is supporting that web application as well. So that's kind of the basic architecture there. And then we use a whole raft of software on top. Until relatively recently, we were Klaviyo users for email, very big emailers. We're sending 500,000 emails a day, something like that, 2 sends a day. And I could see not the writing on the wall for Klaviyo, because it's a great product, but at the scale we were beginning to operate, we needed more from it. And we started looking at the way that personalization was being done, first-party data and all this kind of stuff. And it was just, we felt that we were reaching the end of the road with Klaviyo. And it was also getting very expensive for what it was providing. So we moved to Bloomreach, which made Klaviyo look like a cheap thing. Bloomreach is infinitely more expensive, and I wish I'd known that necessarily before we did it. It's an expensive product. You're being used by the biggest brands in the world, but it provides full personalization. Personalization of the email itself, of the website, the navigation when the customer lands, the recommendation of the products. You've got full integration for WhatsApp, SMS, web layers, etc., etc. We're not even remotely using all the features yet, but it's the direction of travel for the business. And I think, yeah, I'm super excited about that. But it's been a complex integration. We're 6 months into that, and we've now got email working all right, but we're not even using the rest of the features yet. So it's the future, but it's difficult.
Okay. So coming back into the scaling your own team, right? 200 people now.
Yeah.
Is there any specific platforms, tool that you're using? Any specific techniques? How you manage all of this?
So we use, on a simple level, we use a piece of software called Homebase for clocking in and out and managing holidays. Cheap product, really good, manages all of that side of the business. We use Notion a lot in the business for information and so on. We use Monday for project management. So Notion more for wiki and storing information and so on, and Monday for actually managing projects. We are using, what else do we go into a lot? In stats and things, we're using Matrillo, which is a stats platform for, it's built on one of the emailing platforms. It's very good for cohort analysis of customer data, though you've got that natively now in Shopify, but WooCommerce doesn't come with that. What else? We've just signed up for Mention Me, which is the referrals platform. And we've just also signed up for Firework, which displays video and sort of live shopping straight onto your website and allows you to record live shopping and make it look like it's live, and very good for displaying UGC in a more interesting way. So we've just signed up for that, but it's not live on our website yet. I think web development wise, WooCommerce is a tough to scale a WooCommerce architecture, and it's not designed to be. It's very resource heavy. So we've had to build out a whole. We actually have a managed server arrangement where our hosting company are called. They actually own all the servers. They're in a data center in London, and we've had to build out a network now with load balancers and redundancy and and so on. So there's probably about 10 servers strung together, like by the time you add it all up, to deal with that. And that's been a process this year of having problems with the website, going down, being offline for half an hour, even longer at one point, and it got really expensive. So yeah, it's an ongoing process actually that we're going through, and it's expensive. And I like all these things, no one teaches you to do it. You encounter problems and you have to figure out how to solve those by getting advice from people. The bigger you get, sometimes it gets easier to get advice because your suppliers tend to have more experience than you, so they tend to be experts. They may be trying to sell you something, which is fair enough, but ultimately they will advise you and help you solve problems. So that's one of the advantages of scale, because you become more important to them. They then want to invest their time and effort in helping you solve problems.
Guys, for who's watching us online, if you want, just post your questions and we can always bring them into the conversation. Was the hype of the AI in the e-commerce ecosystem and in general ecosystem, have you even tried to implement any AI techniques in what you're doing?
Yeah, we have. So we did, the first thing we did was to put a product into our sort of live chat thing, but quite unsuccessfully, to be honest. It took a load of work and wasn't very good. What we've done most recently, which does look like it's going to work very well, we actually employed somebody to join us to run AI. He'd done his first degree in AI in Mumbai. He'd come and done a master's at Manchester in AI. Then he spent a year working for an American company building a product that would automate making ads for in AI. And now we've got him in. So with the first project we gave him was to sort customer service out, and we're automating a load of the customer service work at the moment, and that's just about to be finished. It's running daily trials now, so the basic brain of it is all working, and I'm really excited to look at how that's going to work, and I think it's going to save a lot of money. We've got 13 or 14 people in our customer service team, and it's certainly going to change the dynamics of the job that they do. And I think what will happen is that they will move from being a customer service. It doesn't take away all the work. Let's start with that, but it could halve the work, let's say. So what I think will happen is that customer service team will become an outbound sales team rather than being a purebred customer service team. So we are looking at going into business to business. We're direct to consumer at the moment, but we're getting so many inquiries for business to business. So I think that we'll use them as an outbound sales team for that. We're also looking very seriously at TikTok Shop and recruiting an army of affiliates to promote on TikTok Shop. Now, that anytime you're dealing with a load of influencer type people, takes a lot of handling that. And we are going to do that through our customer service team and have them do outreach. You know, I was watching a podcast yesterday, and the guy was talking about growing they were an agency, and they dealt with large TikTok shop launches, and he was describing something where they'd send out between 10 and 100,000 automated outreach to TikTok creators, and they would typically from that get perhaps 2,500 requests for samples, saying, yeah, I'll look at the samples. So then you've got to physically deal with that, post those out. But what that produced for that brand in the first month was 0 to 400,000 in sales on TikTok Shop the first month. And they got countless examples of similar, growth stories. So I think that's a really interesting area for us to look at in 2026. You know, we're doing a little bit on TikTok Shop at the moment, but it's mainly with our own staff. We are rolling that out. The objective we've got at the moment is to copy what QVC is doing and cover TikTok Shop almost 24 hours a day with our own staff, internally. But I don't think that's really where the money is coming from TikTok Shop. The money is coming from an army of creators on an affiliate model. And what seems to be happening, and I've got no evidence, this is just secondhand, but what seems to be happening is actually you don't make money on TikTok Shop. They're giving big commissions to the creators. So the creators make their money on the shop. What they're actually making their money on is in secondary purchasing on Amazon and their own website, as those customers either come and look elsewhere for a second shop, or even just get the information. It's almost like a brand awareness play on TikTok is translating into sales on Amazon and their own website. So that's a big push for us for 2026, because we don't particularly want to go back to spending 650,000 a month on ads. I just don't think that's the not in the same way. It's the Zuckerberg's making the money from that rather than us, and so we need to learn. We need to think about it a little bit differently this year.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Do you sell on other selling channels? Why or why not? Asking Tammy.
So hi Tammy, we do a tiny little bit on other channels. So on Amazon, we are currently doing about 25 or 30,000 pounds a week, and we really do it for new customer acquisition. And I think it's important to be there. It feels to us like the only company that makes money out of Amazon transactions is Amazon themselves. You support those sales with ads, and in truth, they're the ones making the money. It's very difficult to run that really profitably when you have to support it so much with ads. I think that might change with what the TikTok link into Amazon. We do our own fulfillment on Amazon, so it's. Other than that, no, we don't do any other marketplaces. I'd love to be on Next, which is one of the UK retailers, but we're not on there at the moment. And it does remain sort of a space that we're going to start looking a little bit more at next year, and more on the business to business, actually stocking our products in retailers as well, which we don't do really to speak of at the moment.
I was wondering, because you keep all manufacture here in the UK, which is a big surprise for many people that I talked about this LiveTalk. They said, "Oh, are they manufactured in UK? How come? Because everyone can import from China and stuff like that." So, can you tell more about like why?
There's a few reasons for that, and the biggest part is historical. So we started the business with no money. I didn't have any money. My Justina, when she started, she worked in a coffee shop. We had no money at all. We were really poor. And so most of our business model evolved as a consequence of not having enough money in the business. And I had, in one of my earlier businesses, I'd had taken an investor into that business, and through, the business was not ultimately successful, and I got called into a board meeting and did a short presentation, 5-minute presentation. They said, wait outside. They called me back in and said, we're closing the company down. Now, don't get me wrong, it was absolutely the right thing to do, but that was a traumatic experience for a young entrepreneur to go through, and that made me very wary of external investors. So I don't have any external investors in Valentte, and so we've built the business on growth on debt finance, and so by manufacturing the product ourselves, we were able to test a lot to figure the product out. We were not constrained by minimum orders because we could make 5 of the products if we wanted to. I actually enjoy the process of making things. I like that. So it's personally, I find that satisfying. So I think we just gradually done those things in-house. We built the capability. So why would we now outsource it? We might, we're British made, we're proud to do that, and I, at the moment, can't see that changing. We do our own fulfillment as well. That is something that we might potentially change, because maybe other people can do that cheaper, and also it's as we've scaled, it's just more and more makes the business more and more complicated. Whereas if we concentrate, say, just on manufacturing and just on marketing's where the money is. Telling the story is where the money. That's where you make your money. But manufacturing gives us a lot of protection. I can make products in the morning and send it out to a customer in the afternoon. Whereas if I'm using third-party manufacturers, even in the UK, I can't do that. And if I'm using manufacturers in China, I definitely can't do that. So it's, and the other problem, quality control in fragrance products is very challenging, because you can't tell the difference between a highly fragranced, when you get a candle or a reed diffuser, right, particularly candles, they smell the same. when they're cold, regardless really of how much fragrance they've got in. Once you get over enough, we won't smell the difference. Whereas when you burn them, if you haven't got much fragrance in there, there's no fragrance to lift and scent the room. So quality control is super difficult. So we've always steered clear a bit of that. And the other thing, I suppose, is that we use a lot of natural ingredients. So it's all scented with essential oils. Again, so easy for a foreign manufacturer to take shortcuts on that and not use that. So yeah, we've always done that in-house. I never say never, but it's where we are at the moment.
The big question in this case, because obviously you guys invest a lot in the branding, all this catalog packaging, which is fantastic when I've got it. So have you in think about start opening your own offline retail store?
We've periodically looked at it. What we've more looked at, to be honest, is going back to shows. Now we're a bit bigger and thinking there's all that footfall in shows. Should we be taking a big stand there, doing the main shows through the course of the year just for brand building? But it's shops themselves, I don't think so. It's so expensive. You know, I went to a very interesting talk, at Shop Talk Barcelona. Again, the keynote speech there was by the founder of Rituals. They're currently opening, I think is he opening a store every single working day of the year. They're up to more than 2,000 stores now. Really interesting guy. But it's a colossal investment, you know, in doing that. And it's a different set of skills. You know, and you have to be really careful about that, because business is hard enough as it is while you focus and concentrate on what you know and understand. And still, like I've been in this business, 15, nearly 17 years, and I've been around online for a very long time, and I've seen lots of ebbs and flows since the mid 2000s and in like 2006, 2007. And I do know the space, and still I find it really difficult. What do I know about retail, in truth? So it's easy to get that wrong, to spend a lot of money on it. And so I'd be a big ask for me to get into retail. Though you see brands like Gymshark, for example, now moving into that space, but they've got the scale at the point that they're at now, and they're also able to buy in the expertise to do that. But they're still really doing flagship stores as opposed to, experiential stores, as opposed to a full play retail model of actually doing that. Though I think ultimately those are the best models. When you look at Next, for example, having the shops, the ability to click and collect, the ability to return free of charge into the store, which brings you into the store to look at product again, and the catalog and the website. I think that sort of omni-channel approach and a marketplace on top of that, where you've got third-party brands selling, I think that's the sweet spot. Will we ever get to that point? I don't know, but that to me is the holy grail, where you've got it all covered, and they're all feeding off each other, improving the experience for the customer. Because ultimately, what this is about is, you think about what Amazon's done over the years. It's just taking away friction, make it super easy to shop with you, take away the risk, do it fast. It's all about improving the customer experience, and that, to be fair, is what Next is doing with that kind of full channel, omni-channel approach. And I think, we're not even remotely there, but I can see the value in that.
We have one more question here from Kim Smith from United States. She's a small handmade dog treat business. Would you please elaborate on your experience and growth strategies as you move beyond 5 employers, especially starting growing advertising and your physical plant and managing inventory with demand?
So growth is, I think that stage of growth is a really interesting one. You may or may not have already got to grips with the offer, the product market fit. You've got some customers at that point, but you've got to get really clear about customer acquisition and making that stack up. And if you think about the sort of classic Alex Hormozi model of create an offer that people feel stupid to say no to. So that needs to be a starting point. You've got to get that first purchase right. And then you've got to get the mechanics of the offer, the landing page, the ads right, so that you can at least break even on the first transaction. Then inside the first 30 days, you get a second transaction from them. And suddenly then you can grow from inside your credit card budget, because you get your Amex card or whatever it is, you run the ads, you get your money back in time before you need to pay for that, and you repeat the process. So I think that's how you go after growth. It's about about getting that offer, and it's optimizing. The way to think of it is it's like a merry-go-round. You've got the ad, the landing page, the offer, and you just keep going around them, tweaking which one's holding you back at the moment. You go round and round that circle to improve that. Then what comes with that is, after you've got that working and you've figured out growing, well, then you just need to keep scaling and holding on to the performance. So that's why you have to keep optimizing it. In terms of physically dealing with the operations of that on the side of that, that's challenging. And you have to pick your battles. You gradually get better at operationally running a business, coping with stock control, coping with the challenges of running a bigger business. But it is difficult, and you have to surround yourself with good people. At the stage you're at, you need generalists. So you don't need specialists. You don't want loads of expensive people. Actually, you can make quite good use of enthusiastic doers. You want doers in the business like that, with good energy about them, who want to support you, and search out that as a characteristic. And people will solve problems around you. So just surround yourself with good people. It makes a big difference. You want to work hard and buy into that growth, that what you're trying to build.
The next question is very much correlates with me usually asking about advice to other founders and who's on the very early stages. If you had to rebuild Valentte from zero tomorrow with only 10 grand, where would you spend the first pound? And plus here, any possible advice what you will give to yourself back in the days? Like what will
nice question. That's a really nice question. So what I would do is we might have 500 different products in their range. I would cut the range to 5 or 6 products. I would make the range much smaller. I wouldn't bother with all of the complicated other things that we make. I would just take the best-selling products. I would simplify or do exactly what we just described there, in terms of I build email. You make money by ads and email. I mean, that's the thing. If I had to start again, then I would build email off the back of Instagram or something like that, using ManyChat, with an opt-in. So I'd probably build the email list like that. And then you just get the offer right. I'd build it straight off the back of ads. Interesting challenge to do again. I think you could do it much quicker and easier. I wouldn't bother with all of the. What would I do? What would I do differently? I wouldn't bother with shows. Definitely not. I think you grow a business this day and age by getting really clear on the customer experience. So I would focus in on that, the unboxing experience. What does that customer get as they open up the product? What does the customer really care about? So in our space, for example, in home fragrance, everyone thinks it's all about the packaging or this expensive glass, but in truth, I don't think it's that at all. Fundamentally, what the customer cares about is the smell of the product. Does the product actually do what it says on the tin? So I would spend a lot of time thinking and trying to understand. If I was going to start again and I didn't have any money, I would really be looking at what the customer cares about. So we can do that by looking at our own data, like our own reviews or our own interactions with customers. But if I was starting again, I didn't have access to that. Well, you just go and look at someone else's, right? So I would spend a huge amount of time looking and reading reviews. Let's say I wanted to get in the dog treat business, just because we're talking about it, right? I would go and look at every single big competitor, and I would scrape or get every single one of their reviews, and I would take those reviews and I would analyze them and think, what's the patterns here? What do these customers? Because the way to think about it is, what the person writes a review about is what they care about. That's what they value in the product. So if they're talking about the fact that their dog will sit down, or it's meaty, or it's, I don't know what dogs care about, or it smells nice, or whatever it is, you're going to see in the reviews what the customers cares about. So then what you do is you reflect that back when you're constructing the values of your product. When you're trying to figure out what to talk about in ads, what to show on the packaging, what to show on the landing page, use all that information from your competitors' reviews in order to fast track your own knowledge, your own product. So you then get to the heart of what it is. I would also use, I never remember what it's called. It's you can use it to show, let me see if I can find it. Probably the best subscription we have in our business, let me see if I can find it, is it shows, you can look at a competitor's brand, you can look at all their ads, their landing pages, their emails and so on. So if I was starting again or starting in a different space, I would look at that for the space and I would unpick competitors. All we actually do in our own business is model competitors. So we will, or model other brands. So you identify a brand that's obviously working. So take someone in another e-commerce company, you think, well, I know what they're doing. I can see the sales data, or they're telling me they've got these sales. So you know what they're doing must be working. So you have to unpick it. So you have to go and be a customer, shop the website, go through their email sequences, look at their ads, look at the landing page, look at the way they upsell, look at the way they construct bundles, look at the messaging that they use. Because you know in there, that combination of things is driving their growth. So you can learn something from that. So we do that all the time with other successful businesses. We're trying to model what they're doing, trying to understand it, and then apply it in our own business, because the lessons are very similar. The products may be different, but the theory is basically the same.
We've got one Valentte customer here in the market here. Are you worried about the coming UX tax increase? Have you had to find more efficiencies and stuff like that? And I will probably plug in here, like again, like you're so focused on the UK, and I know you're trying to get into the Ireland, if I'm not mistaken, right, as a next market. And my question will be another Europe and in the US. Now, if you don't mind, just to cover this a little bit as well.
So I think starting with the first bit of that about the increases in taxes and so on, we're very worried about it. It's, when I look back at last year, it cost us about £500,000 extra last year in the increase in minimum wage, the increase in employers' national insurance, the increase in business rates, all added up to around about £500,000 for us. So that was obviously challenging. We're going to see something similar this year. It's not quite as extreme, but the increase in minimum wage is going to be significant for us because it affects every run of the ladder, like all the staff, because you end up having to move other people's wages up as well. So we are a bit worried about that. It's the government seems determined to damage businesses. I think it's absolutely crazy, but that's a different story. Regarding the international expansion, we absolutely want and believe we can build a global business. Right now, it adds a lot of complexity to the business, and I just don't think we need it. We think we can do 100 million in sales just inside the UK. So we don't need to go and make the business even more complex than it is by pursuing international growth. So I cannot see us even remotely looking at that for at least the next 12 months, probably the next 2 or even 3 years. And then we'll go after that when we feel really like we're ready for that. And we've got an absolutely humdinging model and system, because at the moment we still don't feel like we have. It's hard work what we're trying to do at the moment. That doesn't mean there's not a big opportunity out there. Funnily enough, the guy I was talking to yesterday, his business, he's based in Dublin, but his similar space to us. It's called the Black Stuff. He makes natural soaps for men, and his main business is in America. And he was singing the praises of that. So I'm not saying never. We'll definitely go and do that, but we're not right at the moment.
Sounds good. So for everyone who's listening, if you go to ecommercecamp.co.uk/chat on your phone, you might be able to join our group of different merchants, and Luke part of this group as well. So if there will be any questions that you want to ask that you unfortunately could not ask in 1 hour our live talk, please join our group e-commerce camp co UK. Subscribe to the newsletter for upcoming live talks as well. Look, I'm pretty much, appreciate your openness here. Like you've done a great job of explaining, and I really picked quite a bit of nice points from this discussion. Guys, thank you for being with us all this time. Thanks for watching online. Please, Luke,
Brilliant. Thank you.
thank you
Thank you
for
for having me. I've
being
loved
as
it.
our guest. And I'm looking forward to see your success. And maybe we'll do another live talk in a little bit like later this year,
Definitely,
right?
really happy to do that. I've loved it. It's I enjoy sharing the story, and if I can help other people avoid some of the mistakes we've made, then I really want to do that. I've had great advice from people. I watch a lot of podcasts and a lot of live shows and get tips and advice. And if anyone can gain things from my story, then please do. And if anyone specifically wants to connect, then do connect with me on LinkedIn. It's the easiest way to get hold of me.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you coming. See you soon.
Cheers. Cheers.
Bye.